Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly beautiful fall day as we see the leaves changing colors around us. My name is Brigette DePape. I'll be your MC today. I'm the chair of the Expert Advisory Council. I've worked on climate action for over 15 years with groups such as Indigenous Clean Energy and Narratives. After giving birth to my daughter, I felt renewed energy to protect our beautiful home, the Earth, for her and future generations. Our family was part of Canadian Geographic's Live Net Zero Challenge, where we reduced our family emissions by about half, and it's a process of ongoing learning. Before we begin, I would like to honor the sacredness and importance of this land and of the ancestors who walked where we are standing today. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the province of Manitoba is located on the treaty territories of Treaties 1 through 6, 9, and 10, and that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oete, Dene Sulene, and Nihenawuk, Woodland Cree, and Inunuwak, Swampy Cree peoples. Manitoba is the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation, and northern regions are Inuit lands. This is a reminder of our treaty histories, and it helps situate us today on the original homelands of these nations, the original stewards of these beautiful lands, and to share our gratitude for them. It's an honor to welcome you here today at Buffalo Crossing for an announcement that will have a significant impact on the future of Manitoba and beyond. First, I'd like to invite Elder Katie Whitford from Sandy Bay First Nation. Thank you, Elder. Elder Katie Whitford from Sandy Bay First Nation to start us off with an opening prayer. Welcome.
Bonjour, Kinew. Shonyogan ebik dishnikas, makwando dem, kawikwadongak donji. Apajingachina no manongo maya, no apichonishingwa kea, kenagego mago chagadek. Wegeni biomaga midjongandanang apijonishin. I'm very honored to be here today to be passed tobacco to say a prayer for this gathering. This is beautiful, apijonishin. The water is beautiful, the trees, everything, the earth, our Mother Earth. It's so awesome to see what has been done here. And I'm so very honored. I humbly ask the Creator to look after us, to take care of us, and to take care of Mother Earth. Our prayers go directly to the Creator, as my spirit name is translated to Golden Eagle Woman. Nungkum gagi siya kapajonishin majayang. Apajo niminanda makina wab minago kumagagi siya chigeng making. Ang begi siya kinagego oy minoya ta kinagego juminuse kumaking. I pray to the Creator that everything goes well in our lives, that everything goes well in this beautiful place here, and to all of you and to all of our people out there. Every time I pray, every day when I pray for our people, the ones that I see suffering on the streets. And every night when I go to bed in my nice warm bed, I think of them. And on days like this, when it's colder than usual, so I say a prayer for them as well. And everyone that is dealing with health issues or have lost a loved one, I send my prayers. I ask Creator to listen to us, to show us mercy. This tobacco is our medicine that goes directly into our prayers. Kichimigwach ndikita kinagego nongo mamaga jisek. Apajonish and wega jitcheng. I said thank you for today, that all of that is going on here. And I say thank you to this beautiful place, nature, away from the city. My granddaughter standing over there, bikes here, and she described it as that, nature away from the city, from the concrete jungle where we live over there. So miigwech ndikita mino kinagego for everything. Miigwech.
Yep. Miigwech. Kiminatagas and namayan.
Miigwech, Elder Katie Whitford, for your beautiful and healing prayer. I'd like to acknowledge the elected representatives who are joining us here today. Minister Bushy, Minister Moroz, Minister Naylor, Chief Suap, Minister of the MMF, Marielle Gauthier. Thank you all so much for being here today. To share more about this exciting announcement, it is an honor to welcome Premier Wab Kinew to the podium. I remember with gratitude many years ago attending a town hall on climate change that Premier hosted and where he shared many inspiring visions for our future. And it is so incredible to see many of those visions becoming a reality today.
Well, I feel very humbled to be introduced by Brigette DePape, and I have to say, probably everybody here agrees too, that it's very inspiring, everything that you do in the community. And the fact that we have somebody like Brigette working with us on this is a sign that we're serious about taking action to stop global warming, but that we're also serious about being held accountable. And I hope that everybody takes the time to appreciate that. So I have a job that is maybe going to not be the favorite part of the media here, but I hope that everyone else finds some value in this, which is that I want to talk about the philosophical underpinnings of the net zero strategy that we're going to unveil here today. Often in this era of reconciliation, we open events with a land acknowledgement. And as part of that opening, we quite often invite elders, like we had Elder Whitford here today. And as part of that, we offer tobacco to them to say the prayer. But do we know why we offer tobacco? Well, it's kind of right there in the name, right? It's an offering. In many traditional Indigenous cultures, tobacco is viewed as a sacrament. And the idea is, if you're going to have some sort of impact, that you offer an offering in order to offset that impact that you're having. In the case of Elder Whitford, we're having an impact of taking up part of her day. And so we want to be able to show that we value and honor that. In traditional culture, if you go into the bush and you pick sage or cedar, or maybe you drop a tree, the same idea is there. Offer tobacco to make good on the impact that you're having on the environment. And in many Indigenous cultures, like the Anishinaabe culture in particular, because I'm familiar with that, is the reason why I would speak about it in the particular case, there are very, very well developed over the millennia, protocols and structures for offsetting the impact that human beings have on the environment. In order to understand why our culture asks this of us, I would first share that in our worldview, we are the most humble, the least important, the least worthy of being considered about amongst all living things. And the reason that our ancestors taught us that is because we take our life from the animals, from the fish, from the rice, from the plants, from the berries, from the roots, from the minerals that we find in our traditional territory. And because we're so dependent on all these other things that we are in this interconnected web of relationships with at all times, that is the reason that we have to place ourselves on the bottom. And when we do anything to take the life of or to have an impact on those living beings around us, we truly are called to make an offering to offset it. So one example is if you hunt a moose. When you drop the moose, you're supposed to cut the beard off, hang it on a tree. There's a part in, I guess would be the gullet of the moose before the greens are processed. It's called baby tus, and it's supposed to be for pregnant women to eat because it has the high iron content and the other materials that would be beneficial to somebody in that prenatal time of life. Similarly, when we harvest birch bark, when we harvest stones, when we gather the medicines that bring life to the Medewan, one of the traditional religions of the Anishinaabe people, there's a very well-defined series of steps that we're supposed to take as we harvest these things. I would even invite you to consider the place names that many of us are familiar with. You probably know that many of these things have been named by Indigenous languages, like Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, right? I don't think that's a shock to anyone. But there's also a number of place names like Chanupawakpa, Piowanik, Biwabik, and so on and so forth that also hint at the traditional uses of these sites by our ancestors. So Chanupawakpa is one example. That means pipestone in Dakota. Lo and behold, there is a quarry there. Piowanik means flint in Anishinaabe, Moyne, and Cree. If you go to Piowanik, Ontario, there's a quarry there. Biwabik, Minnesota. Biwabik is iron, or a generic term for metal in our language. And again, you find iron in those hills. And so built into the Anishinaabe and Dakota and other indigenous worldviews is an understanding of the reciprocal nature of the human being with our environment. And there is a responsibility that we are called on to honor the impacts that we're having by carrying out these specific steps that will make whole the web of relationships that we have with our natural surroundings. Now, the one that I grew up with and the one that I'm very, very familiar with, among others, is the protocols around manoman. Manoman is wild rice. This is one of the staple parts of the Anishinaabe diet, and we used to eat it pretty much every day when I was growing up. And I'll tease folks a little bit here. Wild rice is not what you get at the restaurant when they bring a plate of white rice and it has a couple little sprinkles of brown or gray in it. Wild rice is manoman, what grows on the shallow waters and that we harvest. Not only is there like a very, very specific process for turning that wild rice into its edible form that begins with harvesting it in canoes, that continues with drying it in the sun, and then, of course, heating it over the fire, dancing on it to reduce it. Of course, the dancing has since been replaced by threshers and other mechanization. And then finally winnowing it so that the husks are removed. But there's also a traditional cultural framework built around the harvest of wild rice. In traditional times, you had a rice chief. So not only would you have the chief of the community, a leader, a war chief of a community who was the leader in battle, but you had a rice chief. Such was it so important to the staple of our diet and the ways of our ancestors that there were designated people in the communities, not specific to gender, but designated people in the communities who would tell you when the rice was ready to pick, and in other cases, when the rice should not be harvested in a given area. And this is all based on Indigenous knowledge, Anishinaabe knowledge in particular, that was developed over the generations. Similarly, if you go out onto Lake of the Woods and see some of the rock paintings, you will see an image of a grain of rice surrounded with very ornate decorations. And that one is called Menominikaanshi. You see the word Menomin is in there. And what Menominikaanshi is the spirit of the wild rice. And so if you understand the grammar of the Anishinaabe as a portal into the worldview, then you would see that the word Menomin itself is not animate, right? Once the grain is taken off the plant, it is not necessarily viewed in our worldview as being alive. However, in this sort of meta-level structure that I'm describing, it has been imbued with a spirit that we can refer to, Menominikaanshi. And so when we offer the tobacco into the water, when we have the feast at the end of the harvest with the community and we share that with everybody, it's this spirit that we're acknowledging. And so I hope that you understand that from an Indigenous perspective and an Anishinaabe perspective in particular, when it comes to living in the environment, there is no separation. All of the activities that we have are going to have an impact. And so too, does any activity that we have impacting the environment take place, do we also need to carry out an equal and perhaps greater activity to offset it and to make sure that the environment is whole? And so for the Anishinaabe rice picker, that might mean putting rice in some mud and placing it back in the lake. That might mean having the feast and the giveaway to circulate your windfall, as it were, with the people around you. But so too when you think about the quarries that I was talking about. If you were to go to Pipestone, Manitoba or Pipestone, Minnesota, if you were to go to Pewanik, Ontario or Biwabik, Minnesota, and so on and so forth, you would probably walk over top of the quarry and not know that mining had taken place there in the past. And so from the Anishinaabe perspective, or an Indigenous perspective, a worldview grounded in the beliefs and knowledge of Indigenous nations, the question isn't about whether or not to have human activities on the land, because every single activity does. The question is, to what degree are you going to engage in actions that are going to make the earth whole? And so I hope you understand why I went on this long, meandering talk about wild rice. Because in the era of global warming, climate change, we use it, but let's be honest, climate change was invented by right-wing ideologues to try and make it sound less scary. In the era of global warming, it is important that we return to some of the original concepts of this land, I think, which is to say, look around. There are so many activities that we carry out in Manitoba that have an impact on the climate, that have an impact on the water, on the earth, on the animals, on the life forms, plants, medicines, you name it, that we do need to re-engage with the idea of what is the rest of the framework? What are the actions that we are going to take that are going to make this place as safe, clean, and healthy for the next generation as it is today? And of course, I know the people gathered here will say, well, it should be safer. It should be cleaner. It should be healthier. And we agree. And so using science, policy, government levers, we hope to be able to put a path before the people of Manitoba that will say, yes, we're building up our economy. Yes, we are taking actions to combat the deep poverty that exists in too many parts of our society. We're taking actions to make the suburban middle class better off. We're taking actions to make our province a have province. But along the way, we haven't forgotten who we are, which is a people who love to live off the land. And we are also committed to a series of actions alongside economic development that are going to make this place whole. We think the best way to do that is by making those healthier, safer, cleaner choices affordable for the average person to be able to adopt in their personal life. I have no doubt that the Manitoban who loves to shop at Bass Pro Shops, or who loves to watch a Jets game, who loves to go canoeing or likes to be out on the boat or likes to hunt this time of year, I have no doubt that that person would do the climate-friendly thing if they could afford to do it, if it was the same quality and convenience and same cost as perhaps a more impactful form of activity on the environment. So, we're trying to make friendly Manitoba environmentally friendly Manitoba. And we've asked a wonderful minister, cuts a mean figure in a blue suit, to carry out the detailed implementation of this philosophical approach that I'm outlining for you here. This started some number of months ago with me sitting down Minister Mike Moyes and explaining to him the reciprocal nature of the environmental impact and the economic development that happens with wild rice in Anishinaabe communities. And then I offered him tobacco, and I said, I want you to build our net zero strategy around that, Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous understanding. So I'm real happy to be here so that we can hear the details of Mr. Moyes' hard work, all contained herein. Hopefully you understand now why we've got the wild rice harvest on the front cover of this, as well as not just a land acknowledgement in here, but a tobacco acknowledgement as well too. So with that in mind, I'm offering this tobacco to our minister to take Manitoba on a pathway to net zero by the year 2050. Go ahead. We could change the script.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Premier, for that offering of tobacco and for sharing that very meaningful lesson about Minoman and the Anishinaabe worldview. What a beautiful day in Manitoba. The sun is out. We're in an absolutely beautiful location for the launch of Manitoba's path to net zero. This is our roadmap to a cleaner, stronger province that reaches net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And this is the place to do it. Buffalo Crossing at Fort White Alive. A beautiful facility and fittingly a net zero building right here in Manitoba, which is a perfect symbol of where we're headed. I would like to thank our MC, Brigette, and the new chair of the Expert Advisory Council. I'm so glad that Brigette has taken on this role, and I know that her leadership is going to guide this work for years to come. I'd also like to thank Elder Katie Whitford for starting us off in a good way. Now, when we talk about the path to net zero, this isn't just another plan that we want to prop up onto a shelf. It's an ambitious, practical strategy that sets out how we're going to reduce emissions, grow our economy, and build on our clean energy advantage. We're doing this because it's the smart thing to do. This isn't an obligation, it's an opportunity. Manitoba has always been a province that builds things, grows things, powers things, and we can do it while cutting emissions and keeping our economy strong. The move to net zero means we can reduce our reliance on imported fossil fuels and instead use more Manitoba-made renewable energy, keeping jobs and dollars right here in Manitoba. And as we make this transition, we're committed to doing it so that no one is left behind. That means helping workers learn the skills they need for these new opportunities and ensuring all Manitobans benefit from the cleaner economy. We also recognize that we can't do this alone. To get there, we need to work in partnership with the Innu, Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Dene, Métis, and Inuit communities, whose deep cultural and spiritual connections to these lands and waters guide us all. I'm very humbled to receive this request from the Premier to develop the strategy that is unmistakably from this place, from Manitoba. And that is exactly why, as he explained, why it's built around the Anishinaabe teaching of Manoman, wild rice, the perfect symbol of balance, respect, and renewal. This plan is an invitation to all Manitobans to come together in a shared responsibility to protect what we love about this province. We didn't build this plan in a boardroom. We listened to Manitobans, individuals, communities, farmers, businesses, municipalities, and experts in every sector. So thank you to everyone who took the time to share their ideas, fill out surveys, or take part in sessions and discussions through the Expert Advisory Council. We came out of that work with a comprehensive, inclusive strategy, 43 key initiatives across 10 areas that touch on every part of the economy and everyday life. And so let me share a few of the highlights that I'm especially proud of. First, we're establishing Manitoba's first Climate Change Committee of Cabinet to make sure that this work stays front and center in every decision that we hold. We're modernizing how government operates, from updating our green building policy and transitioning vehicle fleets where possible to ensure that government procurement supports sustainability. We're also building the EV charging network that Manitoba needs, including our first publicly owned Manitoba Hydro fast chargers that are going to go from Winnipeg to Thompson, so that driving electric in Manitoba just makes sense. With the newly appointed Expert Advisory Council, we'll be modernizing legislation and strengthening how we set and report on our climate targets. We're going to help communities access funding and work directly with Indigenous nations on climate and clean energy projects that advance shared net zero goals. And we know the impacts of climate change is already here, so we're going to be co-developing wildfire prevention and preparedness strategies with Indigenous communities to protect people and lands. We'll also be supporting northern and remote communities to reduce reliance on diesel and move towards affordable, clean electricity. And through Efficiency Manitoba, we'll expand programs that help families and businesses save energy and money. We're going to keep working with municipalities to expand public transit, intercity transit, and active transportation, because getting around should be affordable, clean, and easy. Our agricultural producers have always been innovators, responding firsthand to the impacts of climate change. Manitoba farmers are leaders in regenerative agriculture and beneficial management practices that reduce emissions and restore the land. We'll keep supporting that leadership through research, partnerships, and innovation. We're also going to lean on nature-based solutions, protecting peatlands, wetlands, and forests that store carbon and protect our biodiversity. A great example of that is the Seal River Watershed Project, a made-in-Manitoba solution that protects nature and helps fight climate change. And as we look north, we're committed to protecting our waterways and sensitive marine environment around the Port of Churchill. That's why Manitoba is going to work with the federal government to invest in a feasibility study for a national marine conservation area in western Hudson Bay. We're already seeing the future being built here. Literally, Manitoba is home to Canada's first and tallest residential net zero carbon building now under construction. And that's Manitoba Innovation in Action, showing the country what is possible. And when we retrofit buildings for energy efficiency, we're not just cutting emissions, we're saving people money and creating jobs. That prosperity is something that you can feel right in your pocketbook. This plan looks out to 2050, but we're not going to wait to get started. Our first 3-year action plan is already in development to make these commitments real and measurable. So in closing, the real strength of this plan is the partnership. Manitobans know how to roll up their sleeves and get things done when we do it together. By working with business, labor, Indigenous communities, municipalities, civil society, and everyday Manitobans, we're going to build a province that is strong, sustainable, and affordable for everyone. So thank you, merci, miigwech, and thank you for being a part of Manitoba's journey toward a clean, inclusive, and prosperous future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Moyes and Premier Kinew, for your leadership and for sharing this visionary plan for all of us that is really going to have a huge impact here in Manitoba and beyond. Minister Moyes has been working tirelessly for Manitobans to advance environmental protections since he was appointed in January and well before that, and has been guiding the development of this very important and visionary strategy, alongside Director of Ministerial Affairs André Forêt. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to work with members of the Expert Advisory Council, many of whom are here today, as well as the Department of Environment and Climate Change, to host workshops that brought experts, organizations, and environmentalists together to help develop this path. We heard directly from Minister Moyes about his illuminating vision for this, and it was so inspiring to hear him share more about this today. Thank you so much, Minister. Our last speaker today has been involved in climate work in Manitoba for years, personally has been a great mentor for me and many others in the climate movement. I am so honored to introduce Director of Climate Change Connection and Board Member of Efficiency Manitoba. Please welcome Curt Hull.
Thank you, Brigette. I'm very honored to be here today at this beautiful occasion and this very hopeful day. I guess in a way I'm representing the views or expressing the views, hopefully in my few words, of everyday Manitobans, the thousands and thousands of everyday Manitobans who are keen to make use of ideas and move this thing forward and really take real action on climate change. And I'm really happy to be here and to say a few words, because this is a good day. It's a day where we begin to see a brighter future. Today's announcement marks an important step at an important time. Manitoba's path to net zero isn't yet a finished plan, but it contains a powerful promise. A promise that we can meet the challenge of climate change while building a province that is stronger, fairer, and more resilient. We know what's at stake. Our summers are getting hotter, our storms more intense, our communities more vulnerable. But we also know this: it is possible to take action in a way that's affordable, that creates good jobs, and that protects the places we love. To move toward a net zero future, we must build on what makes Manitoba strong: our clean power, our skilled and determined people, our spirit of innovation. This is about making sure the shift to a cleaner economy leaves no one behind and gives every community the chance to thrive. But let's be clear, the real work is still ahead. The next steps are about turning ideas into action and plans into progress. I, and many others across our communities, many of you here, hopefully are committed to helping build that pathway forward. And we can only succeed if we do it together. We need every Manitoban, governments, businesses, communities, and individuals to support, to contribute, and to take pride in this collective effort. Because the path to net zero is not just about reducing emissions. It's about renewing our sense of purpose, protecting our shared home, and building a future our children and grandchildren will thank us for. So yes, this is a good day, a day where hope and action meet, a day where Manitoba steps forward toward a brighter, cleaner, and more resilient future for all.
Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers, to Fort White Alive for hosting us, and to everyone here today on this beautiful fall day as we witness the launch of a visionary strategy and as we renew our collective commitment to action to protect our beautiful home, the Earth. So at this time, we'll open the floor to the media for any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Well, the first thing that I would say is Manitoba Hydro has a commitment to ensure that we have the lights turned on and that Manitobans' homes can be heated. But they also have a deep commitment to the path to net zero. We're going to ensure that the IRP and our action plans are in alignment, and we have no doubt that we can do this together. I'm sorry, I'm not the minister responsible for Manitoba Hydro. You would have to ask Manitoba Hydro, but what we do know is that we are committed to furthering our clean energy advantage, which is what we're doing, why we're building 600 megawatts of wind power after generations, decades, in fact, of not. So we're looking forward to more clean energy on the way. all those plans are being worked up through Manitoba Hydro. We're very excited about that first 600 megawatts in decades, and I'm very confident that this is going to be the beginning of more clean energy for Manitoba.
So energy is so important to powering the modern economy, but it's also critical to the success of any net zero plan, ours in particular. We got this amazing asset in the form of a grid that's 97% carbon free, and that has always given Manitoba the potential to be a leader globally, to be able to say you can have an advanced growing economy while also doing your part to fight global warming. The problem is that the previous PC government didn't build a single watt of electricity during their time in office. You've got more energy in a donut at Tim Hortons than the PCs added to the grid during their time in office. And what happened at the same time? Well, the AI driven rush to scale up data centers took place, and there's this huge demand for energy across North America, globally really, but you know, obviously we're focused on the North American market. And most of that energy is being served by carbon right now, new energy. So Manitoba, I think, has a really important role to play in charting the future. This document that we're sharing here today is a framework that will guide those future decisions. When we think about the future of Manitoba, I've said all this talk about the Port of Churchill is just the beginning. 70 years from now, we're going to be launching rockets from Churchill. Similarly, Manitoba, writ large, 70 years from now, we're going to need gigs and gigs more energy than we have today. And this document is about setting the framework to guide those future decisions. So you are asking me about projects down the road. The focus today, though, is what is the decision-making criteria going to be? What is the commitment? And what we're saying here today is that every activity has an impact on the environment and will need to be offset. Manitoba Hydro has existing gas turbines, and so we need to figure out a way to offset that impact. A potential future hydro development, solar development, wind development will all have different forms of impacts on the environment, which this document that we're sharing here today is going to tell you that you need to make plans to offset as well. And so tons of activity is going to happen on the energy file over the coming 5 years. But this is really crucial today so that people understand that the focus is going to be on making sure that all of the energy projects we pursue in the future will be pursued with an eye towards ensuring a path towards net zero or maybe net negative by the time we get to 2050. Well, what I've got on the table today is this beautiful, new, grounded in traditional knowledge outlook for how we're going to combat global warming in Manitoba and make sure that your kids have a safe, clean, healthy environment. You know, Hydro's integrated resource plan is something that they're still working on, but this is going to guide it. The first thing that we released last year was the Affordable Energy Plan, which was our commitment to you that Hydro's planning for their IRP is going to make your life more affordable. And now we're saying that we want their activities under this plan to fit within a pathway to get to net zero or net negative by 2050. So we're putting those constraints, some would say opportunities or guidelines on Manitoba Hydro, to say, as you plan for the next decade of energy use in Manitoba, you got to make sure it's affordable for the average person out there, and you got to make sure it's environmentally friendly. Hydro, c'est une de nos opportunité immense ici dans le Manitoba. Et puis, en même temps, tout le monde, tout partout dans notre province, connaît la valeur du terre, de l'air, de l'eau, de la relation entre les êtres humains, les animaux, les plantes et toutes les autres choses dans l'environnement. Aujourd'hui, nous annonçons ce plan pour livrer un avenir énergétique, un avenir avec beaucoup plus de puissance économique dans la province, mais qui va aussi soigner notre environnement, nos lacs et puis tout ce qui habite ici, incluant les êtres humains.
Well, to be clear, the 2050 is the deadline. Like, that is the goal. We're going to net zero by 2050, right here in the plan. Now, I think what you're asking is, when are we going to see those tangible on the ground? And I mentioned a few of them today. But as I also mentioned, the action plans they're in progress. They are right now in development. We want to make sure that we get these action plans off the ground as soon as possible, so that we can start building towards that net zero future. It really depends on the different sectors. Some of the sectors, as you can imagine, are easier to decarbonize than others. And so we want to put in, we want to consult with the different sectors. We want to work with all the different departments in government so that we can pull in the same direction. So there are pressing deadlines for sure, because we want to make sure that these projects can get off the ground as soon as possible. But others will take a little bit more time as we consult. Well, one of the things that I hear as minister and from the experts is that typically you want a charger about every 150 kilometers or so. And so we're currently mapping those things out. Really exciting piece of that Manitoba hydro charging stations right to Thompson, so that people in the north, people in rural communities can have that pathway from Winnipeg all the way up to Thompson. It's going to be 6 charging stations. I believe they're going to have about 4 ports each, if I'm not mistaken. And so really excited about that, but there's more to come for sure. Well, transportation is one of our major emission sectors, and so we're going to have a comprehensive approach to that. But I can let you know that we are looking at extending the EV rebate. Well, I think what you're seeing with some members of my my caucus, my colleagues here, with the cabinet committee, that we're going to be bringing those different departments together at a ministerial level. The departments are already meeting at a department level, and so we're going to get those plans underway as soon as tomorrow.
Well, this is exactly it, right? Like, it's like a 1-for-1 kind of thing. Or if you want to get to net zero, it's like a 1.1 for 1 kind of thing, right? And so we are talking about a mega project in northern Manitoba whose terminus could be the Port of Churchill. And as a result, let's protect a huge area of the waters just to the west of that. This is the fundamental idea behind this plan, which is that everything we do is going to have an impact. So along with planning the economic project, let's also plan for the environmental offset or the environmental opportunity to make things safer, cleaner, and healthier in the future. Yeah, I think it would definitely take into account the state, as far as we can predict what it is, that protected area would be operating in. And there is a Port of Churchill today. There is traffic moving critical minerals out of that port today. But obviously the plan across Canada that is getting Canadians excited is to dramatically expand that capacity and potentially to expand that year-round. That is going to have an impact. That is going to have an impact not just on water, but on ice. And then it's going to have an impact on animals and wildlife and people who live in the region. So all those things have to be taken into account. And feasibility study, by the way, that's just like our way of saying this today, but we're going to do it. You know, the same way that we're going to do the Port of Churchill. And we got to work with the feds and Indigenous nations to make that happen. But there's other opportunities there too. Making a big play for a mega project in the Churchill region doesn't happen in isolation. It happens with the fact that we've really leaned into the Seal River Indigenous Protected Area. We're now bringing this additional marine protection to the table, and you'll probably see us do the other Indigenous Protected Area northeast of Shamattawa in relatively short order. And so all these things are us saying, okay, we're about to set sail, rightfully so, because of the impact that Donald Trump is having on the Canadian economy, to do a whole lot of heavy lifting to build up the economy. What do we have to do to build up the environment? What do we have to do to honor our relationship with the land and with the animals and, you know, with the plants? And for me, you know, this is just an evolution. You know, we're talking here today about net zero, and there's going to be another plan, and there's going to be legislation and stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like we've done as much or more than any other government in the history of our province within 2 years, right? We did the EV rebate program. We've gone to market for 600 megawatts of wind power, which is like 3.5, 4 times as much as exists in the province today. We protected LeMay Forest. Not huge in terms of landmass, but huge in terms of symbolism and a value statement about who we are as a province. And so down the list, right? There's a ton of actions that we've been taking in government. And so we just want to make sure that some of those steps that really make the heart sing for the environmental crowd are also matched with actions like the hydro rate freeze, which makes clean energy more affordable, but also benefits the average person out there who's just trying to get by with the cost of living going up and up and up. So 2 years in, a lot of action, and a solid plan on where we go from here.
You mentioned the affordability again, but I have to ask you this because I've never understood how do you build out new electrical generating capacity, new transmission lines, while getting control of hydro debt, fixing existing failing hydro infrastructure, as you know, doing a few bipoles in kind of rough shape, and you cut away some hydro revenue in the first year. How do you make that happen?
We added a ton of revenue to Hydro's books because we reduced the amount of, you could call it a dividend. It was called various forms of taxation and royalties that were paid to the government. We cut those to help strengthen the books at Manitoba Hydro because we knew that there's going to be these other big steps we want to take. And some of those big steps are, yes, we have to refurbish the HVDC lines. We have to go into existing dams in some cases and make them more efficient, make them better able to operate year-round and maximize the amount of megawatt hours we're getting out of a specific facility per year. And all of this, by the way, is signed off on by the Public Utilities Board. They are your arbiter to ensure that Manitoba Hydro, which is a monopoly in our province, still respects you, the consumer. And along with that, they also take a look at the long-term operations and maintenance and financial picture of hydro, and they sign off on this every time that there's a rate application. And so we got all these huge plans for the future, you know, rockets from Churchill and, you know, like a half province within our lifetime. But all of it being driven by Manitoba Hydro, being delivered by our energy industry in Manitoba requires one thing. It requires you to buy into it. And in order for public confidence to be maintained in Manitoba Hydro, we have to ensure that the rates stay affordable. And so if you want to get into like specifics of how the impacts of inflation over the medium term help to ensure that the fiscal questions that you're asking about slowly merge at the same time that we have the emission reductions merging towards zero, we can get into that. But basically the step that we're saying we need to do is to make hydro affordable so that people love their electric utility in Manitoba. And with that public confidence in place, then all the things we want to do in the future, whether it's new generating capacity, a potential hydrogen industry, novel technologies related to electricity, all those things are things that we can explore.
I'm glad you raised some of the utilities more because its sole view at Manitoba Hydro, it's not raising rates enough to meet the demand, and that to meet the
We returned more revenue to Manitoba Hydro this past year to ensure that they could keep your rates affordable. And the Public Utilities Board hasn't questioned this hydro rate freeze that we're delivering to you. So you're going to enjoy an electric rate freeze for this 2025 calendar year, which is a real help for families who are dealing with the rising cost of living. And by the way, the whole thing that we've been doing throughout, saving you money by cutting the gas tax, freezing hydro rates, while also doing things like EV rebates and Seal River Indigenous Protected Area, is so that you, the blue-collar Manitoban, understand that a government that cares about the environment is on your side. So that you understand that a government that's going to take action on fighting global warming is on your side and understands the necessity to be able to keep your head above water with all these bills as they keep piling up. I took my kids after the 2019 election to the climate march at the Ledge. It was amazing. It was full of hope as they were inspired by Greta. By the way, we got Manitoba's Greta right here. I'll just say that for the record. But what has happened since is that inflation has crushed those aspirations that I could feel almost tangibly at that time. And in order for us to prevent a generation of Canadians from being lost in the fight against global warming, we got to take care of the basics. Yes, the protected areas, yes, the clean energy, yes, the geothermal, that all sounds great. But if people can't drive to work today to keep the lights on and keep food on the table, the other stuff's not going to happen. And so I recognize that there's always going to be accountability and people pushing us to do more sooner. But the reality is we love this place that we live. And we're making a strategic decision as a government to say we're focused on making your life more affordable so that we can do the big things around a safe, clean, healthy environment in the future.
Why not, with geothermal, mandate district geothermal in all new residential builds, in all new areas in the city of Winnipeg, for example, where it's had a
I think another philosophical decision that we've taken is that the carrot is better than the stick. And we've just gone through this whole big social experiment over the last decade in Canada about the biggest mandate of all, which was a rising carbon price. And it lost the support of the public. And so I'm a big believer that trying to incent people through positive price signals is much more powerful than trying to incent people through negative price signals. And you don't have to read Joseph Stiglitz to understand this. The positive price signal is better at motivating people because people are the same or better off in that scenario. Whereas the negative price signal leaves people worse off when measured in terms of disposable income. And yes, you could maybe calculate some sort of externality-based equation that shows how the environmental impact makes up for that. But people are smart. The voting public is smart. And they didn't buy it when it came to the carbon tax. And so here we are in a post-carbon tax era in Canada where we have to say that in order for us to move ahead on the environment, it requires us to maintain the support of the public. And affordability is absolutely essential. Having the idea that we're committed to net zero is not novel. You know, you go to any environmentally minded person, they'll say like, yes, of course, environmental, net zero policy by 2050. Everyone will say that. But what matters is not the idea. What matters is how can you get it done? And that's why we're focused on affordability. That's why we're focused on the fiscal decisions we've made at Manitoba Hydro. That's why we've made the broader set of policy decisions we've made in government to date. Because we know that it is essential to keep the vast majority of Manitobans on board with the direction that we're heading in if we want to maintain public support for a net zero strategy over the decades-long time span that it will require in order for us to succeed. The choice of words on mandate is what I'm trying to draw out. If we can get district geothermal happening in Manitoba, hurrah! Let the confetti fall from the sky. Let it be biodegradable confetti so that Lisa doesn't stare at me. And but you know what I mean? We're not going to mandate people to buy an EV. We're going to put a subsidy in place to make your next electric vehicle cheaper and better than an internal combustion engine vehicle. We're not going to mandate district geothermal. We're going to put in place the geothermal retrofit program, and others in due course. I'm sure we'll announce more geothermal initiatives in the future to incent you to take that choice, because again, it's more affordable and it benefits you and the environment and so many other good things. But I just think that right now, in the current moment that we're in, where we're so focused on the economy, we're so focused on the Trump tariffs, we're so focused on these things, how do you make environmental policy fly in this era? You have to have a mind towards affordability, and you have to have a mind towards flexibility. And I think that means taking a step back from mandates and taking a step forward with a whole lot of the great ideas that Minister Moyes has brought forward in this document.
There was mention of a wildfire prevention and mitigation strategy. I'm just wondering, Minister, can you provide a little bit more detail about the work that's already been underway on that plan? Has there been work underway? Is that something we'll see in the short term, medium term? Just be more detail.
Well, what I can say is that we just came out of the worst wildfire season in living memory. And so that is currently under review in terms of how we strategically responded to that season, both in terms of our emergency management team as well as the wildfire services, who did an amazing job under incredibly hard circumstances. And so we recognize that the local communities often will have insights in how to respond or how to prevent things. And so as we review that process, we're going to be looking to make those connections with those local leaders and communities so that we can get it right, heaven forbid, if that ever happens again.
And I've got one for the Premier from my colleagues back in the office. Apologies, little change in tack. This one is just about PEGWIS and Child Family Services. On Friday, Chief Stanford called for the immediate termination of PEGWIS CFS overseeing child welfare, saying kids are being turned away without receiving services. On Friday, you mentioned that you need a little bit more time before commenting, so I'm just wondering, the Families Minister often points to PEGWIS CFS as a model for decolonizing child welfare, while the Manitoba Advocate for Children expressed concern about its lack of oversight. What steps can your government take to make sure kids in PEGWIS are safe?
Well, safety of kids is super important. And when a leader like Chief Bird speaks up, we got to pay attention. That's why our Families Minister is speaking with them today. I believe they have a meeting, but our staff can follow up on some of those details with you. And our commitment as a government is to return parenting to Indigenous communities. It's to return the sacred bond that was broken in the residential school era in too many families to those families' descendants. And if C92 is not working for PEGWIS, let's have that conversation and figure out what will. Again, C92 is what the federal government under Prime Minister Trudeau chose as the structure to advance returning jurisdiction over Indigenous kids to Indigenous communities. But I'm not married to any specific ideological approach. I just want to see that action happen. So if there's another pathway that we can find with Chief Bird and his community, we're open to that. And our Families Minister is having that engagement with him today, and I know it'll be a good discussion because they're both good people.
Just while I have the media here, just to follow Julia's shift in tact, I was the MLA that brought forward the complaints to the Ethics Commissioner back, I guess it was over a year ago now. And what we're seeing right now is that we want to debate that report, which the Ethics Commissioner has put forward, and we have an opposition that is delaying that is obfuscating that is trying to avoid the scrutiny of which the ethics report outlines. And so I would call on the opposition to let's have our day. We want to debate this, and we wanted to debate it last week, and instead they brought forward an opposition day motion and tried to talk it out, and then they brought forward petitions and tried to talk it out, and then today they're putting forward another opposition day motion to talk it out. It is time for Manitobans to hear the debate, where we have the first premier being charged, where we have a member of a caucus being charged, where we have a former deputy premier being charged. It's time to talk about this, and I would say to the opposition that it's time to stop running away from their poor record. Well, we have an incredible agenda that we have been working to get through, and time again, we have an opposition that continually drags their feet, whether it's in legislation, whether it is with this conflict of interest report, and it's time to do the business for Manitobans.
They delayed the machete bill by 30 days. Tell me one person who opposes.
Would you like to?
Yeah. Sorry, I just couldn't resist jumping in there. In the spring session, they delayed the machete bill for like a month. Does anyone here think it's a good idea to sell machetes to children? That's why we took the spring session, because they filled it up with pointless delays. And then you have the Heather Stephenson being fined for the first time in Manitoba history. Now they're blocking that too. This one I can see. I don't know what their argument was on the other one. This one, obviously, it's uncomfortable for them. So, you know, that's the point that I would like to make. The PCs, burning time, all tactics, no strategy, and as we see from the Conflict of Interest Commissioner, no ethics either. Too much corruption.
Thank you, everyone.
What could you say?